Please be seated. I'd like to invite Fred's granddaughters to come forward to share some memories with us this morning.
There was a book that my grandfather would read or tell me about called The Little Prince. And in that book, a child draws a picture of a snake that has swallowed an elephant. To every adult who sees this drawing, they think it looks like a hat, because it does. And to them, it's always just a hat. I think somewhere along the way, most of us lose the ability to see that elephant inside the snake and lose that childhood whimsy. I don't think Grandpa ever did. That's the best way that I know, as his granddaughter, how to describe what it felt like to be his grandchild. He took the world seriously in the way that children do, not in spite of everything he lived through, but somehow alongside it. I think all of us remember that he used to carry a tan bag with him. I think a lot of you probably also know the one. From the outside, it just looked ordinary, like a canvas tan bag with some black piping around. But for us, it was something a lot closer to a treasure chest. He'd reach in and produce a sweet, a small trinket he'd collected for us, something that was just for you at just the right moment when no one else was watching. It was a sort of magic, and he knew it was magic, and the knowing was part of the gift. And of course, there were the actual magic tricks as well. He'd perform them with, the right amount of gravitas. Serious enough that you believed, but playful enough that you kind of suspected. And when he finally did reveal the secret to you, he'd lean in close, whispering, like he was passing something sacred from his hands to yours. He'd say, "Now you can do it." And that was him. Wonder wasn't something that Grandpa held on to. It was something that he gave away. He was a strong man, and a kind one. But his truest self showed up not in these big moments, but the small ones, like letting us play salon on him for hours, dancing in the kitchen, sitting down to play hours of card games that he'd always lose to me or Grandma too, or pulling out the objects that he collected over a lifetime and telling you about each one like it had a story worth knowing. Because to him it did. Everything did. And I think that's why he held on to his father's art the way he did, very carefully, proudly, and all the way to the end. He spoke about his father as a sort of Renaissance man. He was in awe of him. And I don't think he ever fully turned that gaze onto himself. But as his grandchild, I know that we saw it. A man who kept beautiful things close, who passed wonders from his hands to ours, and who always saw the elephant. Thank you.
Thank you all for coming today. I'm Maria. I'm Jason and Victoria's daughter, and also Fred's eldest granddaughter. Thank you to Maddie for sharing what I think really sums up our experience with our grandfather. I'll keep it really short and sweet, but when I was young, someone once told me that the most interesting people are interested. It wasn't Grandpa, but when I was reflecting on, my time with him, it's sort of what I kept coming back to. Somehow, some way, I'm sure you all know that he was interested in art, literature, history, the world around him, always reading things and also sharing those passions with others that he loved. And as his grandchild, so many books were shared with me, things that I would devour and really open up my worldview. But I think being interested in art, culture, all that stuff, that's great. That's sort of the idea of the Renaissance man that Maddie was talking about, but also having that gift and ability to be interested in other people, his family, but those in his community or those who were very different from him. He always tried to bridge that gap, see other people for who they are, talk to them, understand their perspectives. And that's what I'll remember most. And, I've gotten the pleasure, my family supported me through travel and school and now working full time. And I've met a lot of people in my life, and there's not that anymore. And he was all that. So, thank you.
I'm his youngest granddaughter, and I think through that I got to see a bit of a different side of him. But today I just wanted to share one of my favorite memories of the two of us. It was recently this summer, the last time I saw him, the two of us in the apartment, and he had this box of photographs, and he pulled it out, and him in his reclining chair and me sitting next to him on the floor. And it was photos of his family, his parents, his siblings, himself, even grandma, years and years ago, preserved in a photograph. And he remembered it all. And I got to hear about his life long before I came into it. And I got to hear a side of him that I would never have been able to experience otherwise. And that is the type of person I want to remember him as. As everyone has previously shared, he had so much to give the world. And I'm so happy that he got to give me just a little bit of himself. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Kate. I'm Maddie's sister and his second youngest granddaughter. And when thinking of my grandfather, I couldn't think of just one memory, because being with him, it was more of a feeling that lingered in every moment that we shared. I think back to all the times, all the conversations we had, where we ended up laughing so hard our eyes began to water by the end of it. And all the moments we shared, from conversations ranging from little trinkets he found at the market to things we wanted to, put in his hair, whether it was JoJo bows when you were little, or slicking it back into a little ponytail, which I don't know how that managed to occur. But we always managed to find a way to laugh. In every conversation, he carried a feeling of love and true care for whoever he was talking to, whether it was a stranger he met at a yard sale or his beloved family. He had the unique ability to connect with anyone and make them feel seen through his witty humor. You could always count on him to sign your birthday card with his iconic little silly face, or to bring a knick-knack back that he thought reminded him of you. If you knew Fred, you knew how his laughter was simply just a vehicle for his love. Thank you.
My name is John Spencer.
Use the microphone, please.
Pardon me?
Use the microphone, please.
I thought they could hear me in the back. No? Okay. So, all right. My name is John Spencer. I've known Fred and Connie for over 60 years. And I struggled with what to say, and Fred introduced me to my wife, the best man at our marriage, godfather for our son. Anyway, I met Fred first day of orientation at Episcopal College. And he was a friendly guy. It won't surprise you, those of you who knew him, that he approached me and introduced himself. And it probably won't surprise you to know that he didn't introduce himself as Fred Alexander. He introduced himself as Joe College. And that's understandable. He was a bit of a wise Alec, and I caught it. And at the time, and he next introduced himself again a third time, and this time it was Holden Caulfield, and that really surprises me. If those of you who don't know or remember the name Holden Caulfield, I'd suggest you look it up. Yeah. So it still surprises me to think of Fred and Holden Caulfield. Anyway, he finally got it right on the next try. So he was really friendly. He joined a fraternity. He was active in it, had some leadership spots. And Maddie mentioned magic. And so I remember one magic trick he did for the brothers at the fraternity house. It wasn't terribly complicated. He just took a napkin, clenched his fist, put the napkin over his fist, and then he took a cigarette butt. He smoked at the time, and he just ground it into the napkin as hard as he could, made a big production of it. And then after just some patter or whatever it was. He would pick it up, cigarette butt would be gone, and not a mark on the neck. So the fellows were all obviously amazed, so they made him do it again, because they insisted he put it up his sleeve. So he did it with his shirt off. Same routine, same result. No cigarette butt. So they made him do it a third time. And I have to say, he did it in his t-shirt and his gotchas. And again, the same result. So, and I'm sort of pleased to report that was the last time. Didn't go any further than that. So, anyway, he had another, what I would call a magic trick. And I'm glad that young ladies didn't mention it. He had a hand puppet called Rocky. It was a raccoon about that big. He'd put his hand in it and he'd move it all over his body. And honest to God, you'd swear it was alive. I tried it and it just wasn't the same. And he did it first with his children. Remember Jason, Corey, Eric? And then our son Jason was their same age. And with the grandchildren. And the reaction was always the same. They were enchanted, they were enthralled. They asked each generation, where does it sleep? What does it eat? And then, of course, with kids that age, where does it go to the bathroom? And he had answers for all of that. He could just bring people in. He was such a friendly guy. And later in life, he had another party trick, but this was more for adults. And I've been strongly advised by Connie not to do it for you, or even talk about the details. But anyway, let me say, I found out with around 30 or 40 people, many of whom he didn't know, and it always brought the house down. People, especially the women, would just shriek and they'd laugh. Anyway, that was Fred, very outgoing guy, very friendly, kind of person who could say just about anything to anybody and get away with it. Because there was never any malice, never any bad feelings. His intent was always good humor and warmth. He loved people. He especially loved his family. And Connie, you were absolutely incredible at closing years of his life. And the you kids, Jason and Corey and Eric, your support for him when you came and your constant calls to your mom just meant so much to her. And these grandchildren, I don't know if they'll ever appreciate how much you guys meant to him. I just mentioned that he'd be coming, and even though he couldn't verbalize his thoughts, he would just light up. So he loved his family loved him, he loved this community. Between all of his activities, he made it a better place to live for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Erica's youngest son. And I'm not very good at public speaking at all. I apologize in advance, and this is extra hard, so I kind of have my mother's, some of her genes when it comes to really, no matter how long I prepare, but if I need to say things near and dear to my heart, I really get emotional, so I'll do my best. But my father thrived in speaking to people in big groups like this. He loved speaking about others, getting up in front of large groups, telling kind and witty stories about peers and friends at retirement dinners, or speaking on issues important to him at work, conferences and meetings. If you needed a master of ceremonies, Fred was your man, and he was great at it. I remember at a young age picking up a notebook he had on the table next to his chair in our den where he always sat. And inside were what seemed like hundreds of quotes, anecdotes, funny one-liner jokes, all written out individually by hand. I asked him what it was. He said that whenever he's reading a magazine, a periodical, a book, whatever, if something stuck out to him as funny, inspirational, intelligent, or just a unique historical fact, he would write it down. He said the reason was that when he was called upon to speak at a retirement dinner, at a funeral, he would be prepared with an arsenal of quotes ready to weave into his speech, whatever that may be, and a way to do it for his friend, or and really tie the whole thing together and have a great speech. And so he prepared for it. And this was just one of the many lessons in my life where he taught me the value of no matter what it is you do, to be prepared. Be prepared. The Boy Scout motto. One of the things my father was most proud of was being an Eagle Scout and member of the Order of the Arrow. He excelled as a scout and loved the brotherhood and camaraderie it instilled and provided. The structure, character development, and organizational skills he learned would be the basis of the person he would be his whole life. I will not remember Fred Alexander as an avid outdoorsman or sportsman or an adventurer. I don't think anyone would really argue with that. But if you ever traveled anywhere with him or observed his family camping routines, you know the Boy Scout always stayed in him. Be prepared may have been the Boy Scout motto, but its main rule and guideline is everything in its right place. My father lived his life to this rule, and it was everywhere in our house. All of his possessions were kept organized, and some even immaculately cataloged. If you have ever saw or seen our garage or his basement, his work area, you would know. An owner and creator of countless oddities and collectibles, our basement was a treasure trove of cool things that I would secretly explore all the time. But if I ever took something, he would always know. If I ever moved something to a different place than the way he had organized it, he would always know. Everything was in its right place. When I decided I wanted to be a chef, I would cook as much as I possibly could. I was still living at home and hadn't started culinary school. My mother and I would watch cooking shows. I would read cookbooks and print out recipes. And I would spend the afternoon cooking dinner in our kitchen. I had no real restaurant experience, but just a real growing passion for food. My mother, a great cook herself, would step back and let me have at it in the kitchen, experimenting, practicing cooking techniques, and getting to know different ingredients. Dad was different. He would first want to know exactly what time we were going to sit down to eat. 6 o'clock, 6:30. Then we would appear in the kitchen several times later to follow up. Still eating at 6:30? It was infuriating. I didn't understand. Who cares when we eat? I was trying out this amazing chicken dish I saw on Emerald Live. It was the 90s. He would comment on my cleanliness as I cooked. Why did I have to use all these pots and pans? When dinner was over, he would inspect the stove, making sure I had cleaned all the grease splatters and that all the kitchen equipment and utensils were put back in their right place. And I'll admit it, like, my mother was the one actually doing most of the dishes and the cleanup. But if dinner wasn't ready when I had said it was going to be, he would always let me know. The more I cooked, the more I took timing into consideration. The more I cooked, the cleaner I tried to be to save myself from any comments I would receive at the inevitable kitchen inspection. Fast forward to my first day at Culinary Institute of America. Upon receiving my orientation materials, I noticed the front page. I had the school emblem, and underneath was the school motto. Sure. Preparation is everything. We learned the basic fundamentals of cooking, proper knife skills, product identification, food safety, and the most important guideline of all of professional cooking. It's a French phrase known as mise en place. It translates to English as to put in place, or everything in its right place, or everything in its place. It's the foundation of everything we do in the kitchen. Mentally and physically, your mise en place is having all your mentally and physically. Your mise en place is having all your knives and tools organized and clean on your station. It is your ingredients all cut and prepared, ready for service. Your mental mise en place is all about timing, knowing exactly what needs to be done when you start your shift, creating a prep list and organizing your time to complete all the tasks before the start of service. When the customers come through the door, you and your coworkers need to be prepared. Little had I known was that back in my parents' kitchen, he was giving me the skills I would need to excel in my career and for the rest of my life. The things I didn't understand, the things I didn't think really mattered, they were actually the most important. And I learned that from him. Now, I don't know if anybody remembers one of his favorite things, and he was very proud of it. Something he always kept in his pocket was a little box cutter. And he was he used it all the time, and if you needed something, a box cut, a present open, anything that needs to be delicately cut, or he would take it out and he would let you know that you need to have one of these. He uses it all the time, and it comes in so handy. And he was so proud of it, and it's something he always wanted people to be prepared. So I made these, and so I have these for everyone. I hope everybody can, after we're done, they're little box cutters with his initials on it, so that you can either keep it on your keychain or in your junk drawer or whatever. But if you come into those situations where you know you're gonna need something, you can be prepared. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Wow, that was just wonderful hearing from all the grandchildren and children, and John, thank you all for your great, wonderful, kind words of remembrance. I'm Jason. I'm the oldest of Fred's 3 children, and standing here today, I feel the weight and the privilege of that role. I had the longest view of him as a father and as a person, and it's an honor to speak on behalf of our family. My father was joyful and outgoing, and he had this remarkable ability to put people at ease. Whether you knew him for years or met him once, he had a way of making you feel comfortable, welcomed, and seen. That wasn't an accident. It was who he was at his core. As a social worker, he dedicated his life to caring for others, especially those who were vulnerable or overlooked. And he didn't just do that at work, he brought those values home to us. From an early age, my sister, my brother, and I learned that everyone is different, that every person deserves dignity and respect, and that our words matter. He taught us to refrain from hurtful language, to look out for people who might need a hand, and to lead with compassion. Those lessons shaped us more than he probably ever realized. But family was always his priority. He poured himself into creating memories for us, vacations, reunions, and countless moments that still make us smile. Some of my favorite memories are from our camping trips in Montauk and with our cousins from Michigan, and the late summer trips to Utica to visit some of our closest family friends. And of course, there's the legendary 2-room tent from the Clemens family camporee. Those of you who were there will remember the spectacle. A tent so large it practically had its own zip code, and my dad enthusiastically drafting all of us in to help him set it up, while our relatives pulled up their lawn chairs, their picnic chairs, to watch the show. It was chaos, it was hilarious, and it was so perfectly him, determined, enthusiastic, and unintentionally entertaining. He encouraged our interests even when they weren't his own. Whether it was his children or his grandchildren, he made a point of supporting what we loved simply because we loved it. He was thoughtful in ways that were steady and consistent, sending articles he thought we'd appreciate, sharing bits of information he found interesting, and writing us handwritten cards when we were far from home. Those small gestures were his way of staying connected, and they meant more than he ever knew. And then there was a sense of humor, sharp, playful, often wonderfully ironic. That was something he and I especially shared. Some of my favorite times with him were spent watching David Letterman together late at night, laughing at the same dry jokes, the same absurd moments. It was a simple thing, but it was ours. He was proud of where he came from and the experiences that shaped him. His Lithuanian heritage, his years at Ithaca College, his Delta Kappa fraternity brothers, his days as an Order of the Arrow Scout at Camp Tuscarora, and of course his family here at Trinity. These were touchstones for him, stories he loved to tell, and parts of himself he carried with pride. What I will remember most is the combination of warmth, humor, and integrity that defined him. He showed us how to care for others, how to stay connected, how to laugh, and how to be part of something bigger than ourselves. Today we say goodbye, but we also carry forward the best of him in the way we treat people, in the way we show up for family, in the way we find humor even in the messy moments, like setting up a 2-room tent with its own living room. I'm proud to be his son, and I will carry him with me always. Thank you.
As clergy, we are not supposed to eulogize the person who we are here to honor and to remember. We're supposed to try to bring God and theology into the picture and how they lived their life and what they did for their fellow human being. Because at a normal church service in the Episcopal Church, we end the service with a prayer of what we should be doing when we leave the church. how we encounter our fellow human beings and what we can do to make their lives better. I did one thing, though, as a personal tribute to Fred. I got to know Fred and Connie when I was an intern here before I was ordained. And I've only been a priest for a little over 15 years. And they had influence in me, and I didn't wear an alb today. The symbol of our office is our stole, and I chose this stole because you'll understand why when I do the gospel reading, because it talks about the cosmos. And this stole is all about the cosmos. And I didn't wear an alb because I don't need one, because the stole is the symbol of our office. I remember Fred wearing a blue blazer, mostly a blue shirt, and contrasting pants. So this is my tribute to him as part of this service, is to honor him. I always thought he was a very nattily dressed man, we do this for a reason. We gather like this for a reason. It's as old as history itself, how it is recorded that people gather together to honor someone who they love when they're gone. It's part of the mourning, M-O-U-R-N, mourning process. It's only the beginning stage of that. The mourning process for all of us here, especially for the family, does not end when the reception is over. That's just the beginning. We never stop mourning our loved ones. But what we're doing here, and I'm going to differ with you on one point. Yes, in a way we are saying goodbye. But the more complicated thing that we're doing is what we are going to help this family do, because we're their support system. And what they're going to do to help each other is we're going to help them figure out how to say hello to our loved one who is now just a spiritual being and not a human and spiritual being. And that's not easy. And that's why we gather and we will continue to gather and continue to help them out as much as we possibly can, because whether we realize it or not, we're in mourning for somebody else as well. And sometimes somebody cooks something and it smells just like grandma's cooking, and then all of these flood of emotions of that person who's not with you anymore comes in, and they start to cry, and it's an ongoing process. So our support for these fine folks and for ourselves who are in constant grief or never-ending grief because we've lost someone that we love. So we know how that feels like, not their particular situation, but we have our own. So I want to hear everybody laughing. I want to hear everybody crying later. Just talking about this event or that event or the tent, showing pictures of what might have gone on. But I also want to talk to him about how I knew him through church, through theology, through God. If you've read his obituary, yes, Renaissance man. He was one of those guys who knew how to leave church and help people outside of church. especially being in social services. When I got introduced to priesthood, it was like, oh wow, thank God for people like you, because when I need help being with someone in spiritual direction, I call somebody like you. He was one of those people. I like talking about our drop of water in the pond. You know what happens when you drop, or in a small pool, the bird bath in the front yard. You know how the water goes back and forth? Well, think about infinity. You drop that water into Lake Erie. Lake Erie's never the same again. You've changed it. And he had more than one drop of water in his pond. And he affected a lot of people. He took the gospel and turned it into something real for a lot of other people out there. And his ripple has affected people that we will never know, and we're not supposed to. That's the beauty of it. And I garner the fact that he know I might be doing something when I keep saying be prepared. You know? Or I can open that for you so you don't cut your hand or this and that, you know. And those are but so many other things that he did in his business with Catholic Charities, here at church. Is that if we want to think about him fondly and add this to it, is I wonder who's out there who's been affected by his drop in the pond. That ripple that he put out there. How many people did he really help? And then they went and helped somebody else. It's never ending kind of thing, the beauty of it. And so it's not goodbye. It's learning how to discover the hello and how to say hello again. Because no, he's here and he's back there. But where he really is right here. And that's what we need to keep real. Thank God for Fred Alexander.